Hey everyone, today I'm taking you along for my quarterly pantry cleanout where I try to find and make use of groceries that have been forgotten or hanging around for a while. My husband and I have been doing this for years. We call it Pantry Chopped, like the TV show, where we come up with dishes based on a strange mix of ingredients. Not only is it a great way to get creative with the family, but it cuts our grocery bill in half and ensures that we aren't wasting anything. So here I am going through our makeshift pantry, and I found some pretty good stuff. So we have these pickles here. These are from Aldi and they weren't our favorite. I like dill pickle chips that are salty. I'm not a fan of any that are slightly sweet like bread and butter. So I am going to incorporate those into a pickle pizza like we used to make at the restaurant that I worked at. I also found a can of coconut milk, which is perfect. Cannellini beans. These baked beans have been in here for 2 years. They're about to expire, so we've got to use those up. Oh, the canned salmon. This has been floating around the pantry. I don't even remember why I bought this, but we've got to use this up. I am sure we can find a good use for it. Aha, and some pesto. We always have this on hand as a super quick and easy meal, but we haven't made it in a while, so we'll use that up. These grits I bought for one recipe a while ago, and I haven't touched them since, so we definitely need to use those up. Okay, and the pasta boxes. 2 half boxes of penne pasta. Nope. Make that 3. Oh my gosh, I'm so bad with that. All right, so let's go see what we can make. Okay, so we are going to make Pesto Cannellini Penne, which is going to use up the 3 ingredients from the pantry, and we don't need much extra here. So I have my 1 pound of penne pasta that I cooked, and I reserved a half a cup of pasta water, and I'm just stirring in that can of cannellini beans, the jar of pesto, and then we want to add in that pasta water, and the starch from the pasta water is going to help thicken this into a nice sauce and just add to that pesto. And I'm also going to sprinkle on some Parmesan cheese and some salt and pepper, and that is the only additional ingredients that I'm adding here. So this is definitely a big money saver, super simple, but the pesto is delicious and the beans add some nice protein, but it pairs really well and adds like a nice creaminess to the dish. And this was one that all 3 of us loved and something I would honestly make again on purpose, but it felt so good to use up those half boxes of pasta, and those beans have been in there for a while, so definitely a win-win. Okay, so the next ingredients we are going to use up are the grits and the baked beans. So I'm going to make my Cowboy Chili with the baked beans, and we are going to make Grits Muffins. So instead of cornbread, I'm using these quick cooking grits, and these turned out so good. So I'm definitely going to use up the rest of these grits with the same recipe. So this is the same recipe that I used for cornbread. So in one bowl here, I'm mixing my wet ingredients. So I have 1.5 cups of sour cream, 3 large eggs, 6 tablespoons of melted butter, and a 1/4 cup of honey. We just want to mix that all together. And then in a separate bowl, I have 1 1/3 cups of flour, a 1/2 cup of quick cooking grits, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So we're just going to stir that to combine, and then we're going to fold the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients. So I have my muffin tin lined with paper liners. You could also just grease the muffin tin. And I'm going to divide the batter between 12 muffin cups. And I have my oven preheated to 400 degrees, and we're just going to bake them for about 15 minutes or until a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean. And you just want to let them cool for 5 minutes before taking them out of the pan. So while those bake, we're going to get started on my Cowboy Chili. So I have a half an onion minced and 1 bell pepper diced, and my skillet over medium-high heat with a drizzle of oil, and we're just going to add the peppers and onions and cook those for about 5 minutes or until they're starting to soften. And then I'm going to add in 1 pound of ground beef, and we're just going to cook this all together until the beef is cooked all the way through. And then I like to drain it and add it back, but if your beef isn't very fatty, you don't have to drain it. So then I'm going to add in that can of baked beans, along with 2 tablespoons of barbecue sauce, 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, a half a tablespoon of mustard, and some salt and pepper. And we just want to cover that and cook it for about 30 minutes or until it's nice and thickened and everything is warmed through. This was another meal that was surprisingly really good and something I think we're going to add into our regular rotation. That's one of the reasons why I love doing this from time to time, because we actually have found a lot of our favorite family dinners from doing this pantry clean out and forcing ourselves to step out of our comfort zone and make something new. But the muffins were perfectly tender and sweet. And then the chili had the perfect amount of savoriness to balance the baked beans, which are usually pretty sweet. That's why they sat in the pantry for a while. We don't typically love eating those. So another one that A+ worked out really well. So now let's move on to what we're going to do with the pickles, which is my bacon pickle pizza. Like I said earlier, this is something that they used to make at the restaurant I worked at a while ago. And it sounds strange, but bear with me, it is so good. So in this small bowl, I'm combining 2 tablespoons of olive oil with 1 teaspoon of garlic powder and 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. Just whisk that together, and then I spread out a pizza dough, and we're just going to brush this all over. And then to the top of that, I'm going to add 1.5 cups of shredded mozzarella cheese and 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese. And my oven is preheated to 400 degrees, and I'm just placing this on a parchment-lined baking sheet and baking for about 15 minutes or until it's golden brown. And then I have 4 slices of bacon that I cooked and chopped that I'm going to add to the top, along with 1 cup of those pickle chips. And we just want to throw this back into the oven for another 5 minutes or so, just to heat the pickles and bacon through. And then I like to top it with a little bit more Parmesan cheese, some crushed red pepper, and a drizzle of ranch dressing. This one I knew was going to be good because we've made it before, but I'm so glad we're finally using up those pickles, and I can probably make 2 more of these pizzas with that jar, so it's a perfect way to utilize them and get them out of that pantry. I love the combo of the super briny pickles with that smoky bacon and creamy ranch dressing. Definitely adding this one to our meal plan this week again. So for this last recipe, I'm going to be using up the coconut milk and the canned salmon. We're going to be making salmon cakes and coconut lime rice. So starting out with the salmon cakes, I have the can of salmon drained, and you want to make sure that you get boneless unless you want to pick out all of the bones. And then to that, I'm going to add 1 cup of breadcrumbs, 2 large eggs, 1/4 cup of fresh parsley or some dried parsley, some Old Bay, 2 tablespoons of mayo, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, a half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and salt and pepper. This is a very similar recipe to my crab cakes. So then we're just going to combine that, form it into 6 to 8 patties. And then I just set those aside in my refrigerator so I could get the rice started. So for the coconut rice, in my medium saucepan here, I have 1 cup of rice with a 1/2 cup of water and that can of coconut milk. And we just want to bring that up to a boil, turn it down to a simmer on low, cover it, and cook it for 12 to 15 minutes. So that's what's going on here while I am going to fry the salmon cakes. So I have oil heated in my skillet, about 2 tablespoons. And we're just going to fry the salmon cakes for about 4 to 5 minutes per side over medium heat, or until they're nice and golden brown and crispy. And I always like to just have my oven set to 150, 200 degrees so I can just pop those in the oven while I'm finishing up the rest of dinner. So now to finish up the rice, I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of lime zest, 2 tablespoons of lime juice, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then we're just going to fluff that together and cover and let it sit an additional 10 minutes. And then I like to serve some fresh chives on top. This was another recipe that really hit the spot. We all loved it, and it felt so good to get that salmon out of there. I've been moving it around and moving it out of my way for like 2 years now. So we used it up. They were delicious, so it didn't feel like we were just eating it because we had to get rid of it. Of course, if there's anything ever in my pantry that I know we're not gonna like, I donate it to a food pantry, or a shelter, but if there are ingredients that I know I can work into a dish in some way, then it just saves us money and uses up what we already have. I really hope you enjoyed coming along with me and shopping my pantry today. I know it was a little bit different, and of course you won't all have these exact same things in your pantry, but I hope it inspires you to come up with some creative ways to use some things up. And honestly, these recipes are all so good that I would go out and purchase these ingredients again, so highly recommend. And again, it's a way that I kind of come up with new recipes from time to time. So if you give any of them a try, please be sure to leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think. And let me know if you would have made something else with any of these ingredients. I'm always looking for ideas. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.